Okay, here we are with, now this is a mouthful, the 2016 Aprilia Tuono V4 1100 Factory ABS. This is the premium Aprilia Tuono model, the one that comes outfitted with Öhlins suspension, front and rear. Now, if you've ever seen any of my reviews, you're going to know that I've been a long time Aprilia Tuono fanboy. Ever since Aprilia moved from the original V-twin configuration to the V4, the 4-cylinder configuration. When that change happened, I think in 2011, 2012, simply phenomenal big bore, naked street fighter bike. Whatever you want to call it, this bike absolutely rips. It's insane how much performance this thing has. It's quite literally an Aprilia RSV4 Superbike with a big bore kit. Like when you think the performance of Aprilia's top-of-the-line sport bike can't get any higher, they make this thing. And the reason why I like this Tuono V4 so much is just because you can be so comfortable. The sport bike, you're hunkered down, it's got a really aggressive riding position, but with this thing, with this upright, almost dirt bike supermoto style handlebar, it just makes it a lot more comfortable for zipping around town and getting to where you gotta go. Obviously, they didn't change too much else in the ergonomics department. The clip-on, the rear sets are still a little bit racy, not quite as bad as you would think. It actually works pretty good on the streets here, but the biggest difference is just that upright handlebar. Besides that, though, it is every bit as rowdy as the RSV4. It has insane amounts of power. That extra cylinder bore in the engine just gives a lot more bottom end and mid-range power. The thing just jumps off the lines unbelievably hard. It's crazy. It just goes. Like, just gas it and the thing is just taking off. And even with that, all that power under the fuel tank, what really makes this Tuono 1100 totally fantastic is the literally insane electronics that this bike has. Aprilia has been a class leader in superbike electronics for quite some time now. I love that you can actually tune the traction control on the fly while riding. There's a set of paddles here on the left handlebar and you can actually tune the traction control. You can even turn it off if you want. In addition to traction control, this bike has wheelie control, it has launch control. The wheelie control works really well. You can actually put it in its least restrictive mode and it'll still allow the bike to wheelie, but you never have to worry about looping out or getting out of hand. When things kind of start coming up too fast or too high, it kind of neuters the engine power, gets the front wheel back to the ground. Obviously, the least restrictive setting's my favorite, but if you want something that's a little bit more conservative, you can put it in level 2 or the more conservative setting, level 3, and the bike will virtually, it's almost impossible to wheelie. What else I like about this bike is, in addition to the wheelie control, it has launch control. Now, launch control is still pretty rudimentary at this point in motorcycle development. Basically, all it is, it's RPM limit. So when you have the launch control engaged, instead of worrying about having to hold a certain RPM, you can let the electronics just do that. And it kind of takes the guesswork out of that. You still have to really pay attention to how quickly you release the clutch, but at least not having to worry about engine RPM or making sure you're in the optimal part of the power band, it makes it a lot easier. Also, I like how this thing has really top level ABS, and which you can also turn off and disable altogether in case you want to do some sliding or you're riding at the track and and you just don't want the intrusiveness of ABS. But to be fair, in its lowest setting, in ABS level 1, the system works so well that honestly there's really no point ever turning it off, unless you wanted to kind of kick around the back end or kind of get a little bit crazy. Besides that, there's really no reason to ever turn it off. Obviously, this bike has insane amounts of power. I think it's 162, 163 rear wheel horsepower. But even more than the power and the insane acceleration of the thing, it's just the wail of the engine. It's just, there's literally no other motorcycle made today that sounds as beastly, as ghostly as this Aprilia. This thing on the pipe will stir your emotions like nothing else. Like, I've never heard a bike that is just so beefy sounding, so voracious, so mean, so aggressive. It sounds like literally like the meanest Lamborghini or Ferrari sports car with open pipes. But it doesn't have open pipes. This thing is just the stock. That's how it sounds stock, with the stock muffler. It sounds that rowdy. You would never even need to ever put an aftermarket exhaust on this thing, just because it sounds like it's aftermarket right from the factory. Probably the only bad thing about having that awesome of a sounding stock exhaust is that it's gonna attract some attention from the neighbors. This bike, when it's on full song, it creates a lot of attention, both good and bad. Fortunately, if you really short shift the motor and just kind of keep the RPMs low, it does kind of purr, and it's not so insanely loud. But get the RPMs up, and this thing it's an absolute hoot to ride. While we were speaking of electronics, one thing I kind of forgot to mention is the adjustable power modes. Now, Aprilia's had the adjustable power modes on these things for a long time, but recently they've kind of modified the settings. Where you used to have rain mode's actually gone away, and the R now represents race. What race mode does is it gives the most aggressive throttle setting. It's the most immediate, most direct connection between your right hand and the throttle. Of course, sport and track mode carry over as well. Out of the 3 power modes, I actually like the sport mode the best for riding on the street. It just it takes a little bit of edge off the throttle response and makes it not so aggressive and hard hitting. When I'm riding this bike on the track, on the other hand, I like upping the ante and putting it in track or race mode just to have that a little bit more intimate throttle experience when you're wailing around corners. Other than that, there's a lot of high horsepower, really fast naked bikes these days. But where the Aprilia stands out compared to the competition is just in how refined of an overall package it has. From the engine to the chassis and suspension, the electronics. Like, this is a bike that you can ride absurdly hard in the canyons. The chassis is so planted, so stable yet agile. It does everything so well, it's insane. And along with the electronics and the dynamic of the engine, it just allows you to ride this bike very, very hard without having to worry about it biting you. It's a really fun bike to ride. And the fact that it comes with premium grade Pirelli Diablo Super Corsa SP tires right from the factory means that you are going to be able to hit any canyon, any track day, anything, and you will have quite literally race tire like grip. The only probably downside to that is those tires do wear out quick. You will burn up a set of SP Pirellis within 1,000 miles if you're really getting after it. And next to the outright awesome performance of this bike is just how comfortable you can be. So not only do you have World Superbike like racing, like track day aggressive, hard hitting, maximum performance, you actually are relatively comfortable. Again, we talked about the upright handlebar. The engine it has some vibration for sure, but it's not off-putting. It's a real kind of robust, fun kind of vibration that makes you really feel like you're riding a motorcycle and having a lot of fun. I like it. I like everything about this engine. Probably the one thing I don't like is just the fuel economy. This bike likes to drink gas. The old non-big bore stock 1000cc Tuono drank gas, and the big bore one is even more thirsty. You're quite literally gonna get just normal city riding. You're gonna get 26 to 28 miles to a gallon. This thing drinks a lot of gas, and considering the fuel capacity of the bike, you're only gonna get about 100 miles between fill-ups. But if you're not worried about fuel efficiency or have plenty of money to put premium 91 octane in this bike, who cares, man? Because it's an absolute blast to ride. Another thing that I really like about this Tuono is just the styling. Now, I've kind of been a little bit not so complimentary of the Aprilia styling before, but when I started really thinking about it and paying attention to its lines, I love that the tail section, it looks like the RS-V4, like it was copied straight up. The front end, the beak of the bike, still not my favorite, but in this factory color scheme, to me it just screams for attention. It just screams for performance. It's attention grabbing like no other real bike that's out there in the naked bike class. I mean, of course there's that pesky orange machine, and which is a great bike, but the Aprilia it's just such a well-rounded package that it's almost insanely hard to even compete against it. It's just that awesome of a bike. At the end of the day, if I was looking for a pure sport bike that I could ride on the street, be comfortable, do track days on, and just really kind of enjoy wailing on, this Aprilia Tuono would be the bike. This is pretty much the epitome of pure adrenaline, pure sport, pure performance in not even the sport bike class, but the naked bike class, the sport bike class. This is the bike that can do everything and can do everything well. Alright guys, if you couldn't tell by now, the Aprilia Tuono 1100 is certainly a bike that I would purchase. 17 grand's a lot of money to spend on a motorcycle. I would probably opt for the standard model without the Öhlins suspension. For sure the Öhlins suspension looks good. It has nice supple action, but honestly, I just prefer the OEM Sachs components a little bit better. And you're gonna save a couple grand. I'm sure you're not gonna have that gold eye candy, but the Sachs suspension works just as well in my opinion and costs a whole lot less money. Plus it's also easier to adjust because it doesn't have the strange, at least for a street bike rider, adjustment levers compared to the Öhlins. But that's all I got for right now. It's time to pin it on the Aprilia.
So we've ridden this bike virtually everywhere, in the dry, in the rain, on the street, on the track. And if you're looking for a motorcycle with a sport twist, a heavy sport twist, but not that same hunkered down riding position as a full-on sport bike, this Aprilia Tuono V4 1100 is simply the bike. From the engine, the handling, the way it sounds, the way it stops, the way it looks, the way it turns heads everywhere you go. This is a motorcycle that you're gonna put in your garage and you're gonna love it. You're not gonna go wrong with the Aprilia Tuono V4 1100. It's simply at top of the class and bang for the buck. This is certainly an excellent bike that you're gonna wanna own.